For the safety of listeners at home, following guidelines specified by the MPAA for film as a baseline, the following reading will be rated PG for scenes of fantasy violence and some dark imagery. The text read comes from a slightly earlier version of the novel. As such, wording may be different in certain places compared to the final published text. However, the author has endeavored to make sure that the reading and the novel are as close as possible. The Knight and the Unicorn. Chapter 5. The Spring of Cleansing. Tristan couldn't believe it. He survived the giant snake and the poisonous bushes. He wandered through the Enchantress's forest, and he climbed up this mountain. And for what? For a spring to reject his container and melt it like it was some volatile substance? He wasn't even willing to take a sip of it for himself. If it melted his vials, what would it do to his insides if he drank it? And he didn't dare risk his canteen in it. Another option presented itself. He was in a monastery that was centered around this particular spring. Maybe it was previously used in baptisms or drunk during certain purification rituals. If that was the case, then a container that would carry the water would be somewhere around here, and sturdy enough that it wouldn't have rusted or lost any strength due to time. Tristan felt comforted by his logic and went off to search the monastery grounds. The first place he checked was the church itself. The sacristy he had entered held no such item, and neither did the storage room on the other side, though that was the place he figured most likely to hold such an item. He checked 2 of the prayer halls in the grounds, and even checked what might have been a kitchen. But no such luck appeared, and he could not find even a simple wooden cup. The next best thing Tristan could figure out was to bring Rosalind up to the spring. Serena would have to come too, but Tristan had been lucky and not encountered the Enchantress since leaving the meadow. He hoped the good news would be enough to convince her to leave the meadow and bring Rosalind with her. He decided to take a drink of the spring himself before leaving. That would provide further proof for Serena if he could be rendered invulnerable by its magic. It was risky given what happened to the vial, but it was the best option he had. When he returned to the spring, Tristan discovered he was not alone. There at the spring was a young man dressed in dark armor. Its exact color was not clear, it was faded so heavily. He had short dark hair, a long sword sheathed at his side, and a blue bottle hung from his belt. Tristan stopped at the back doors of the main church and stared at him for a minute. The young man seemed to be contemplating the spring like Tristan had been earlier, and did not seem to notice him. Tristan wasn't sure what was going on, but he remained a fair distance away from the man. Even so, if he was stuck up here too, it may well be asked what he was doing here. It also seemed reasonably safe if the Enchantress's magic couldn't come up here. "Excuse me, sir," Tristan called out. "Who are you? What are you doing up here?" The man turned around. He had brown eyes, but they were so dark that Tristan almost thought they were black. His dark brow was furrowed, and he seemed less than pleased to see someone else up here. It was as though he was on the verge of an idea, and Tristan had interrupted his train of thought. "What are you doing up here?" the man replied. "Are you here for the waters of the spring?" "I could ask you the same thing," Tristan said warily. "I do not mean to interrupt you, nor do I want to fight you." "There is great power in the spring," the man said. "The use of it should not be done rashly, but too many have come up here lately, and it will soon drain." "The water seems to be flowing freely," Tristan said, confused by what the man was saying. "Surely there is more where that comes from, considering that pool never seems to be refilled." "Nevertheless, too many people come here seeking its power for themselves," the young man said. "I came up here because so many of my own people have used it for stupid or even wrong reasons. It needs to be stopped up." The young man's words confused Tristan. "I didn't even know another place was around here," he said. "I come from Elindria, and the forests below this mountain are haunted by an enchantress who steals young women from our city. I'm here to help one of them, my own lover, who has been cursed by her." "Your reasoning may be sound, but it is still a futile task," the young man said. "The enchantress has killed many who come up here, and uses this water for her own strength." "If my reasoning is sound, why don't you let me get the water?" Tristan asked. "Why are you stopping it up? Aren't there others who would use this for good reasons?" The young man's eyes got darker, and he bared his teeth, reaching for his sword. A faint glint of a reddish aura around the young man was enough to clue Tristan in that something wasn't right. Tristan reached for his own sword in turn, but did not draw it. They both stared at each other for a moment, sizing up what may be their opponent if the tension grew any tighter. Tristan, knowing he was inexperienced, hoped it didn't come to blows. "There are criminals in my hometown that want to use it to give themselves strength," the young man said. "I decided to put a stop to that since their influence has gotten too strong. It's no reason for those people to come here and use it for their own selfish purposes." "But what about you, huh?" Tristan asked. "You came up here to stop it for your own town without considering another town has a problem that could be solved by this water. Isn't that selfish if you're not taking into account other places beside your own? Maybe your town has a problem with it, but couldn't you just block access to the forest? Especially if you know people are getting killed in here. The young man growled as he again flashed with the red aura. You aren't focusing on the main point. And if I have to fight you, so be it. My name is Alexander from the town of Harran, and I will not let you get in my way. Tristan drew out a sword and put it in front of him as the young man charged at it. There was a ring of steel against steel as Alexander's warm blade crashed with Tristan's own, and he felt the force of the blow almost knock him over. He had to put up a glove and hold the sword in place just so Alexander wouldn't cut his face. The man was still pressing down, and Tristan grunted with the strain. With great effort, Tristan heaved his sword and pushed Alexander off of him. The young knight brought up his sword and tried to bring it down on Tristan, but Tristan jumped out of the way and regained himself. The two stared at each other again and sized up their opponent, trying to figure out their next moves. Alexander took 3 massive steps toward Tristan and swung at him, and Tristan clumsily parried the blow. Alexander swung a few more times, and Tristan tried blocking them, but the third got through a small crack in his armor and gauntlet and scratched his upper arm. Tristan screamed and jumped backwards, grasping his shoulder with his free hand. It wasn't much, but it was bleeding, the red clearly staining the blue and silver armor. The man obviously intended to kill him. What are you thinking? Tristan shouted. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to either, Alexander said calmly. But if you won't leave, then I will do what I must. That doesn't justify trying to kill me, Tristan said. Besides, I don't even have a way to take it down with me. But you persist and stay. Your intentions are darker than they seem if you don't leave your position. That's because I need the water from the spring. If you help me, I can find a way to take what water I need. Then you can do whatever you want. Why do you fight me if I just want to take my small portion and leave? I don't like your reasons. What if you only use it as a story, and like many others who have come here? So no, I will not let you take any. Alexander gave a great swing upwards, and Tristan could only jump backwards to get out of the way. Tristan had to take the initiative soon, otherwise Alexander's clear skill would overpower him quickly. He pulled up the sword and stabbed at Alexander like a rapier, but the other knight easily knocked his sword aside. Tristan tried bringing his sword up in a similar cleave, but it too was blocked by the knight. Alexander's movements became quicker, and he was lighter on his feet. He stabbed at and struck at Tristan multiple times in succession, and Tristan slipped and stumbled on the snow-covered ground. Another stab, and Tristan tried jumping backwards, only to have his feet come out from under him, and he fell on his back on the ground, kicking up a spray of snow. He grunted with pain as the wind was knocked out of him, and he lay on the floor, trying desperately to breathe. Tristan was lucky. The snow he kicked up sprayed right into Alexander's face, and he was momentarily blinded. Tristan had just enough time to recover his breath as Alexander furiously wiped the snow out of his eyes. Tristan gained his breath in time to see Alexander raising his sword above him on the ground, and rolled out of the way. It wasn't good enough. Alexander still scratched his cheek as Tristan jerked his head away. It wasn't deep, but the blood started to trickle out. Some fell on the snow-covered ground and left red marks on the stone. Alexander huffed. Well, you've got more fight in you than I realized, but your form is clearly off. That doesn't prove to you I'm not like those other people, Tristan screamed. I'm no fighter. I'm doing this because I'm trying to save someone, not because I like doing it. What is wrong with you? I told you, I'm here to stop up this spring. I've given you my explanation over and over, and you still find fault with it? Alexander flashed with the red aura again, but Tristan noticed something else was flashing red too. The bottle at his side. That bottle had been on him the whole time, and he seemed to dodge so that it wouldn't be hit. Is he being possessed? Tristan pointed with his sword to the bottle on Alexander's waist. What is that thing? Alexander looked where Tristan's sword was pointing, then turned away. It's nothing. The hesitation was a good clue to Tristan's logic was at least somewhat sound. Maybe Alexander didn't want to fight him, but was possessed by whatever was in that bottle. He started reaching around for his shield, remembering Soren's words on the mountain road. You keep flashing with some magic aura, and so does that bottle. What is it? Do you even know why you came up here in the first place? It's none of your business, Alexander growled. Alexander went to go strike at him again. Tristan brought up the shield and put it in front of him, bracing for the hit. The knight's sword rang out against the steel, but the shield didn't budge. Seizing his opportunity, Tristan pushed the shield out and sent Alexander skidding across the patio. Tristan took the moment to examine the situation. If he could knock Alexander off balance enough to take a hit at that bottle, maybe he would be free from whatever possessed him. And if the enchantress was busy watching Tristan, Serena, and Rosalind, maybe he could make it back home safe. And Tristan would be able to get the water from the spring he needed to help Serena revive Rosalind. Seeing Alexander was still off kilter from his shield push, Tristan grabbed hold of the shield as tight as he could with both hands and charged. Alexander barely had time to register Tristan barreling towards him before the shield collided with his midsection and sent him flying backwards. Alexander hit a pillar of the covered patio and fell over, wheezing for breath and stumbling as he tried to get back up. Now was his chance. Tristan dived for the bottle and kicked at it, not willing to risk touching it with his own hand. It loosened from Alexander's belt surprisingly easily and skidded it across the patio. Tristan then took out his sword, raised it over his head, and swiftly brought it down on the bottle. The bottle shattered into pieces that were quickly consumed by what looked like pinkish fire. Tristan turned around to see Alexander vomiting up a similar red substance. Thankfully not blood, though the fact he didn't know what it was still unnerved him. That soon evaporated into a mist and disappeared into nothing. The knight was on his knees now, and Tristan walked over to him. He was panting and heaving after the vomiting, but otherwise seemed okay and much calmer now. He didn't reach for his sword and seemed to be checking himself over, looking around at his items and making sure everything was still there. Tristan reached a hand down to him, and the knight seemed surprised by its appearance. "Are you all right?" Tristan asked. Alexander seemed surprised at first and scanned Tristan over. He eventually accepted the hand, and Tristan helped pull him to his feet. He seemed relatively unhurt from the battle, and Tristan was thankful he hadn't damaged him too much. "I think I am," he said. "I'm sorry for attacking you like that. I just wasn't myself." "It's all right," Tristan said. Alexander took a moment to think before walking over to the spring and sighing. He looked himself over as Tristan watched him. "Tell me, why did you save me? I saw the connection between the bottle and this aura that came around you. You seem to be acting under the influence, as it were." Alexander laughed. "I appreciate a good drink as much as a good joke, and yet that statement is likely appropriate given the situation. Yeah, that bottle. I got it off a rogue who found it in the woods by the mountain. He said it was given to him by some enchantress, but I thought he stole it. I confiscated it from him and was able to take it back to our guard station, only become consumed with it myself." "An enchantress?" Tristan asked. "I'm in these woods myself because my friend was abducted by an enchantress who lives here and is poisoned, and I'm trying to find a way to get her back to normal. If my enchantress and yours are one and the same, it seems her influence is farther reaching than I thought." "Yes, if it's a coincidence, it's certainly an uncanny one. I only found the bottle a few months ago. Some time before your friend might have been stolen." "Pitting us against each other and hoping we would kill the other off, you mean?" Tristan said. "That would explain why many other warriors from my town don't seem to come back." "It certainly wouldn't surprise me," Alexander said. "But what specifically brought you up here? If you're going against the enchantress, shouldn't you be in the woods down below?" While Tristan did not think it in his best interest to mention Serena or Soren directly, he did decide Alexander had calmed down enough to let him know of at least some of what brought him here. "There. A forest guardian of sorts is keeping my friend safe, but for now I was told to come up here and get some water from the spring to help the guardian heal her. But when I brought my 2 vials up here, they all melted away in the waters of the spring." "A peculiar quandary indeed," Alexander said. "But since you in all likelihood saved my life from that possession and spared me when I was free, I am in your debt. I have a few bottles myself, and since I could drink from the spring directly to heal myself, I can spare a few for you." Tristan was stunned. "Oh, well, you don't have to do that. I could drink some myself if that's the case and only need 1. "No, Alexander replied. "Consider this at least part of my repayment. It's not much, they're common in my city." And he pulled out 2 white ceramic vials with designs of roses on them and gave them to Tristan. Tristan eyed the vials in astonishment. With Alexander watching, he went and dipped his hand in the vial into the spring. The vial did not melt like the glass ones did, and Tristan was able to fill both the vials up to the top before stopping each of them with a ceramic and wood cork cap. "Now, I've heard that the spring water cannot be drunk directly," Alexander said, "but I have 2 more vials." He dipped both the vials into the spring and they came back up whole and filled with water, and he handed one to Tristan. "I'd like this one back, but you may have this drink." Tristan accepted the vial warily and brought the vial up to his lips. He tipped his head back and drained the whole contents. The water was cool and refreshing, and it reminded him of the water in Serena's meadow, but cooler and cleaner and far more reinvigorating. He once more felt like a terrible weight had left his shoulders, but this time he seemed more alert and awakened than he had at Serena's meadow. When he looked across at Alexander, he saw the knight was young and handsome and seemed much more friendly and noble than the fierce fighter that had attacked him not long ago. A smile was on his face, and he seemed rejuvenated too, and any sign of the possession had clearly left his face. Tristan smiled back at him and handed the vial back that he had drank from, and they both shook hands. "Where are you off to now?" Tristan asked. "I must attend to some duties and apologize to some people back home," Alexander replied. "I've got people who will be worried about me." "And you?" "I need to return to the forest guardian," Tristan said. "There is still one more thing I must do before I go home, and hopefully be rid of this enchantress." Well, I wish you the best of luck, Alexander replied, but let me give you 2 more pieces of advice before we part. First is that a companion of mine came in here a few weeks ago and lost his war horn. I fear him dead, but if you find it in your journey to resist this enchantress, use it, and I will come to your aid, as I think I have a few words of my own to say to her. And let me give you a few tips for sword play. You may need it more as you continue down this path. That should repay my debt to you. Alexander walked Tristan through some of the finer art of sword fighting. They practiced parrying and dodging their blades, and Alexander showed Tristan how to use his weight and speed to his advantage. It was a short session, and they were forced to part once they noticed the sky starting to turn to evening. Even so, Tristan felt more confident in himself, and much better off at wielding Sorin's enchanted sword than he did a while before. Good luck, Tristan, Alexander said as they exited the church. I hope you are able to overcome this enchantress and a magic soon enough. Godspeed, Alexander, Tristan said, and hopefully you make it back home safe and redeem yourself. Redemption is a thing earned with much difficulty, Alexander replied, but forgiveness as you have shown me is much rarer and much more satisfying. With that, Alexander and Tristan parted. Alexander walked off down the opposite side of the mountain from Tristan to get to his home, while Tristan descended back down into the forest of the enchantress, strengthened with the 2 vials in his sack. Despite the sun appearing to set in a hurry while up on the mountain, it was still well lit when Tristan descended back into the forests. He picked his way back along the path with no problems and returned to the meadow safely once again. He wondered if his own drink from the spring was bringing him some good luck, or if it was warding against the enchantress. It was evening when he returned to the meadow, and the fiery gold and soft pink seemed to shine down especially much along Serena. While there was still a soft pink shimmer to the unicorn's coat, there was something of a fire in her mane and tail that Tristan had not seen before. It stunned him with how beautiful it was, but it reminded him of a raging, untamed wildfire, the kind that the whole village had to be on guard for, and would work tirelessly to end or at least prevent from reaching the village. Serena perked her head up at his approach. Tristan, she said with a gasp of relief, I was beginning to wonder if you would ever make it down from the mountain, or if the night up there had killed you. It was certainly no easy task, Tristan remarked. Then again, none of them so far have been. As before with the armor, Serena noticed the sword and shield that Tristan now carried with him. Yet another trinket from your journey, she said, mild but with interest. May I check these too? Yes, Tristan said, holding them out so that the unicorn could touch her horn to them. As she scanned them with her magic, Tristan explained where he got them with yet another partially fabricated story. There was a dead knight on top of the mountain. Written and pinned to the shield was a note saying whoever found them could take them. Serena picked up her head and raised it proudly. They are free of harmful magic, she said. Providence certainly smiles on you so far, and it complements the armor you have quite well. You look very much like a knight in shining armor. This journey has necessitated me becoming one, Tristan replied. This may be the way to dispel the enchantress's curse, but it hasn't been easy. If it weren't for this armor, and the sword and shield, I should likely be dead. I did not expect this to be easy, Serena said gravely. Tristan noted a hint of a lilt in her voice as she continued. But you have pulled off the task with strength and valor shown by few others. If anyone is meant to be a knight, or to dispel this enchantment, it's you, Tristan. Necessity made you a knight, but your determination lets you fit the role easily. Tristan felt flattered and could not speak. But your return warrants yet another celebration, Serena continued when Tristan did not say anything. So let us sing for another task completed, and one more step to your triumphant return. Your skill and power have again won the day. The sun shines stronger, the clouds pushed away. Defend with your shield and strike true with thine sword. May nightmares cloud our weary spirits no more. Your presence restores like clear running water. My soul is at peace, knowing of your valor. Though trial and turmoil abound on your quest, may my strength bring you aid until you can rest. O Tristan, brave knight, may you never be harmed, no, not so long as you still have strength in your arm. May the light of love be ever in your face, until you return to your love's sweet embrace. Whereas the first song spoke to Tristan's heart, this one spoke to his mind. Having Serena recognize his prowess and accomplishments made him feel stronger. More than any other point before, he now believed in the task that he was undertaking, and that he may succeed. Having faced 2 of the enchantress's traps and having gained 2 of the items he needed to revive Rosalind, he felt much more confident that he would bring her back home. Rosalind? Amidst the sight of Serena and the inspection of his new sword, he had almost forgotten her. The vials, he exclaimed. Tristan cursed himself as he pulled out the vials and went over to Rosalind, as he gently propped her up against the tree so he could pour the restoring water into her throat. Serena came over and helped him, and they made sure that each and every drop was swallowed and she did not choke on the water. Once more, Tristan checked Rosalind over. Her breathing became stronger and deeper, but it was like she was in a deep sleep. He brushed a bit of hair out of her face and saw that the color was returning to it. One more thing. One more task, and she would awaken. Did you bring back 2? Serena's voice intruded on Tristan's thoughts, and he stood up to meet her face. Yes, Tristan said. He brought out the other vial of water and made to open it, but stopped. Something had clicked in his mind that took a while for him to process. Tristan? Serena called out tentatively. How did you know about the night? Tristan asked. Serena's head jerked back. Well, what do you mean? You were worried if the night up on the mountain had killed me. But you didn't mention a night before I went up there. It is my duty as a guardian of these woods to know the activities and goings-on of anything that comes in here, Serena replied. I could sense his presence even though I could not see him, and he left in that direction. There are a few other ways he could have gone. Tristan looked up from the vial and looked at Serena. The violet eyes had traces of blood red running through them, and the coat of orange and red and pink looked like a river of molten lava. There was a certain fire in her eyes that Tristan had never noticed before, and he froze in place. He wanted to give the vial to Serena to help make her magic stronger to save Rosalind, but he suddenly felt very uncomfortable with giving her the contents. Tristan, Serena called out, gentle but commanding. I need the vial. Tristan considered it for a long moment. Why do you need it? Your friend is still sick, Serena said, walking closer to him, and she will remain so unless, through your courage and my magic, I can heal her. But I need you to cooperate with me on this, Tristan. You are our knight in shining armor, and only if we work together can we save Rosalind and get you back home. There was a venom in her voice that Tristan did not like at all. He took a few steps back as she approached, yet she still kept walking towards him. Tristan made to put the vial back into his pocket, but he couldn't bring it all the way. Give me the vial, Tristan, Serena said. I don't think... I need it to help you. I'm not sure. Give me the vial! The shout, accompanied with an almost feral whinny, felt like an explosion in the otherwise quiet clearing. Tristan jumped backwards, and the vial flew out of his hands, landing a few feet away. He stumbled and fell over on the grass, staring at Serena with a combination of surprise, horror, and fear. The sun went down a little bit, and Serena's coat and eyes were back to their more calming hues. Instead of fire, it was now a gentle flickering light as the sun started to sink below the horizon. Serena herself wore a look of surprise and gently approached Tristan, making sure he wouldn't run away from her. I'm sorry, Tristan, she said gently. It's just... I shouldn't be pressuring you like this. I've been so concerned about everything. The woods, the enchantress, how dangerous it is, that I didn't take your thoughts and stress into account. Please, Tristan, can you forgive me? The unicorn sounded so wounded and hurt that Tristan felt sorry for her almost immediately. He rolled over and picked up the vial and opened it. After a moment's consideration, however, he did not give the vial to Serena and put it back in his pocket. Serena looked at him, confused. I think I shall hold on to this one for a while, Tristan said. I understand, Serena said. She gently laid her head on Tristan's shoulder and wrapped a hoof around him in as close to a hug as a horse-like creature could get. I truly am sorry. It's all right, Tristan replied. Just don't get so demanding next time, okay? Okay, Serena said happily. I promise I won't pressure you any more. They both decided, with the sun set as low as it was too dark for Tristan to find the caves needed for the next task. Serena knew where they were, but it was a longer jaunt than before, and it would be difficult just to keep to the necessary path at night. Serena picked up some more herbs and berries, and Tristan ate them and drank water to refresh himself. Instead of trotting around the perimeter as she had done before, Serena lay down next to Rosalind under the tree, awkward though it was for her, and Tristan lay with his head on her back as if she was a pillow. As Serena cast magic to protect the clearing and sang quietly, Tristan fell into a deep sleep, hoping to rest and be as prepared as he possibly could for whatever challenge awaited him tomorrow. Here ends Chapter 5. The Knight and the Unicorn will return on March 11th.